Hello Galactic family. With loving greetings from all souls at this station, this is Matthew. We are going to share with you what we have been observing in Earth's energy field of potential and what Earth's monitors in Nirvana report about the United States presidential election. In our last message we said that more scenarios around the election could develop, and indeed that did happen, but not in ways that could have been anticipated. As we speak about the players involved, we ask you to please remember what we have said many times: never is our interest in our Earth family politically motivated, and never do we judge any of you. It is not only people in the United States who have the most to gain or lose by who becomes their president. The same is so for the Rockefeller faction of the Illuminati. Their heavy influence on Wall Street and in the nation's government is due in large part to Bill and Hillary Clinton, who cooperate with that secret society. Formerly among the few at its peak, when they saw its global control waning a decade or so ago, they established their own power base and funding sources. However questionable the Illuminati may deem Donald Trump's campaign promises, they know he is his own man, a person they could not control. During the weeks leading to the election, the energy of voters' anger and distrust surrounding Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Trump increased to such an extent that it started drawing unto itself the streamers of all the scenarios, each of which had the potential to lead Bernie Sanders into the presidency. The scenarios are described in the August 19, 2016 message. What would have transpired in orderly fashion as the streamers ran their well-defined courses instead became an energy hodgepodge that could be likened to an octopus flailing in a sea of confusion. Energy is neutral, it simply flows in the direction set by intent. In this case, intent was to influence the election outcome, and the employment of various ways some at odds with others eventually created the octopus. Clinton supporters in the Democratic National Committee maneuvered to Mrs. Clinton the votes in critical primaries that actually were won by Bernie Sanders. Thus, it was she instead of the voters' choice who became the Democratic Party nominee. As for the FBI's investigation into Mrs. Clinton's hacked emails, Director James Comey bowed to pressure from Bill Clinton and other Illuminati to conclude that national security had not been compromised and using a personal server is not an indictable offense. The finger was pointed at Russia for the hacking incident. Vladimir Putin was justified in claiming that was not Russia's doing. Individuals in the FBI and other intelligence agencies who know the Clintons' criminal history released the emails they felt the public had a right to know the truth about Mrs. Clinton. But Mr. Comey had kept under wraps what the emails showed. She used her Secretary of State position to garner donations to the Clinton Foundation and issue favors in return, and some foundation funds benefited terrorists. When those individuals later discovered that Anthony Weiner's computer contained evidence of the Clintons' involvement in a pedophile ring, they insisted that Mr. Comey reopen the investigation. Once again he gave in to Clinton camp pressure and stated that none of the emails pertained to Mrs. Clinton. The aforementioned individuals then enlisted the aid of WikiLeaks' Julian Assange to have the incriminating information passed on to whistleblower internet site operators. To counter the fallout from that unexpected exposure, Illuminati minions quickly set about manipulating voting mechanisms so the larger count would go to Mrs. Clinton. Perhaps the haste required is what led to the errors that caused this ploy to backfire. The larger count was mistakenly registered to Mr. Trump. The negativity created by those whose intent was to deceive and of the deceptive acts themselves is up against the force of ever-heightening vibrations. Republicans are the majority in the House and Senate, but few are pleased that Mr. Trump is their standard-bearer. Democrats are bitter and apprehensive. Many feel that if Bernie Sanders had been the party nominee, he would have won the election, and positive energy around Mr. Sanders continues to grow. That is the vibe picture, you could say, of the United States. In keeping with the universal law that low and high vibrations cannot coexist, out of that energetic chaos must come a resolution. We don't know what it will be, but we can tell you some factors that may well come into play. The stunning upset, as political analysts and the media are terming the election result, has motivated crowds of impassioned citizens to take to the streets in protest, and some are calling for an investigation into the vote counting. If that does materialize and it is discovered that voting machines were faulty or not all mail-in ballots were counted, the election would have to be annulled. In such case, President Obama would remain in office until another president is elected. Mrs. Clinton was not in top physical condition when her clones were fabricated several years ago, and as vibratory levels rise, deterioration in the clone's health and appearance will become noticeable fairly quickly. Still, if another election were to be held, that would not be the reason she wouldn't run. It would be that information about her and the Clinton Foundation is all over the internet. The Republican plank contains ideological provisions that many in the party don't embrace, and they are not comfortable with some of Mr. Trump's rhetoric. They voted for him because he represents change from the government they feel has left them behind. Mr. Sanders, too, espouses change from the Washington establishment, and professional and personal respect for him along with his popularity among Democrats would make him a natural choice as presidential nominee. Or perhaps, by popular demand, as a replacement. Mr. Trump is avidly competitive. That is why he entered the race, was determined to win, and the world thinks he did. The protesting crowds may not bother him. However, when he learns how extensive and stressful presidential responsibilities are, that he is expected to act upon the advice of others rather than his impulses, and he is not the boss of Congress, he may decide that being president wouldn't be as satisfying as being an entrepreneur, and he would welcome a respectable way out. Parts of those factors derive from thoughts and feelings swirling in the mass consciousness, some are known far and wide, some only readers of our messages know. And, you will understand why the most vital factor of all is this: the direction in which Mr. Trump and the Republican Party want to take the country is in opposition to prevailing vibrations, which will continue to heighten along Earth's ascension pathway. That party's direction is in conflict with GAIA's vision, which is shared by enlightened souls, and their numbers are increasing by the day. Resolution and reconciliation must and shall come to heal that painfully divided country whose influence is felt worldwide. Beloved family, do not fear what might happen. Create what will happen by steadfastly living your light. Countless beings throughout this universe honor and support you with the unequaled power of unconditional love.